Predator: Badlands is the seventh film in the Predator series and the first since 2018 to be released theatrically. Its previous entries, both from director Dan Trachtenberg, Prey, and Killer of Killers, were direct-to-streaming offerings. That last theatrical outing in 2018, you may recall, was The Predator, from writer-director Shane Black, who also happened to be one of the stars of the original 1987 film that saw Arnold Schwarzenegger pitted against the elaborately armed alien hunter. The Shane Black film was not so good, not so well received, and marked a pretty sad final production of a Predator film under 20th Century Fox. The studio is now simply named 20th Century Studios, and it's owned by Disney. Someone up the ladder there must have had the good sense to listen to Trachtenberg and all of his ideas, because he has been a devoted champion for the Predator series, leading it through a renaissance of fresh ideas and unexpected new journeys with the Yauja species. Badlands may be the most unexpected of all, and its very existence is kind of a leap of faith. Here we have a film that is a complete shift from the 1987 formula. No longer do we see the humans being picked off one by the alien hunter who, for a very large amount of the film, is required to be silent and invisible. The Predator here, Dek, played by Demetrius Schuster Kuola-Matangi, is the hero of the film. He's the main character, front and center, who occupies just about every scene of the film. His journey involves traveling to the planet Genna, one of the deadliest planets in the known universe, to hunt down a creature known as the Kalisk, which is apparently unkillable. There are other creatures on this planet, with varying degrees of deadliness, and even the plant life is designed to kill. There is an abundance of alien special effects wonderment here, and the closest thing we get to a human is a damaged android named Thea. The two, of course, team up, and that's the general basis of the movie, as you've no doubt seen highlighted in the trailers and posters and all other promotional material. Thea is played by Elle Fanning, who also plays another android of the same make named Tessa. Fanning does very well in this dual role, and the exact approach to her presence is fairly crucial. Being the closest thing to a human, she does work as an anchor to us, the audience, and I'll actually make a good bet that she probably comes as an incredible relief to those who may have been unsure of what they've gotten themselves into during the first 15 to 20 minutes of the movie. Still, a human she is not, and we are constantly reminded of this. If not by words, then the absence of the lower half of her body with wires sticking out of the upper half is a good enough indicator. Not to be outdone, we have an actor by the name of Cameron Brown who technically plays dozens of roles here. The army of synthetic henchmen who are dispatched to aid in capturing the very creature that Dek pursues. We have the Yauja, the robots, the various creatures and plants all throughout Genna. Not a single actual human being occupies this film. I think that's a very bold and risky move. We have entered into pure sci-fi action-adventure territory here. If the film is PG-13, then I suppose that's just by default. There already have been many people, some who have actually seen the film, some who have not, accusing Badlands of watering the source material down and trying to make it more in the style of a Star Wars-type film. Well, I don't think even Star Wars has had the guts to leave humans entirely out of the equation. Even James Cameron, in his wondrous vision of Pandora in the Avatar films, at least felt the need to throw in some ambassadors from Earth for us. Badlands works perfectly well without humans, in a deliberate choice in telling this story, and I think it deserves a lot of credit for that. I admire this direction, and I think the movie is special because of it. At the same time, though, I think it does lead to some personal criticisms I have with the film, which I will get into. But I guess now's a good time to warn that there will be spoilers in this review. If what you've heard so far intrigues you, definitely go see it, but I will be spoiling some things moving forward. First things first, you may be wondering, as I was, when exactly this film takes place in the overall timeline. We know well enough by now it incorporates the company Weyland-Yutani from the Alien films, confirming a shared universe, slowly and slightly opening up the door to another possible crossover. We do not have an exact date or year for Badlands' setting, but Trachtenberg did give a general idea of where this particular story takes place. Sitting down with IGN, he said the following: "There was a lot going on while we were making this movie. Romulus was not yet out, and I hadn't seen it yet. And Alien Earth I was aware of happening, but not sure where that was going to end up, so we decided to set ourselves well into the future. So all the stuff that has happened would have happened before our movie. And I'm cognizant of how in this day and age, with all the media that we have, some of it can feel like homework. And you have to remind yourself, where in a timeline does this sit between this movie and that movie? And I really did not want that to be the case with Badlands. We had a similar case with the previous Predator film, Killer of Killers, the animated anthology that featured 4 different stories. Each of the stories took place in a very specific point in time, except for the last one taking place in the future, presumably on Yauja Prime, the Predator home planet. When asked about the setting for that segment, Trachtenberg gave a similar, somewhat vague answer. It's far off in the future. It doesn't really intermingle with other timelines. It's possible the final segment may be set during the same time as Badlands, but we can get to that later. For now, as far as the timeline goes, probably the initial best guess is that it takes place sometime after the events of Aliens and Alien 3, both set in the year 2179. There, we at least have a very comfortable, uneventful window of 200 years before the story of alien resurrection takes place. One may be led to believe that because if Badland features Weyland-Yutani, then it can't possibly take place anytime after Alien Resurrection, since of course we learn in Alien Resurrection that Weyland-Yutani no longer exists, right?
Oh, they went under decades ago, get him in way before your time. Bought out by Walmart.
Well, hold on there, buckaroo. Clearly you haven't been doing your homework. As the canon stands, Weyland-Yutani did actually regain power after the events of Alien Resurrection. This is outlined in the Weyland-Yutani Report by S.D. Perry, as well as the novel Alien Sea of Sorrows by James A. Moore. Sea of Sorrows takes place in the year 2496, well after Alien Resurrection. As far as the major stories that you may consider canon or proper continuity, this is as far as the timeline goes. That is, unless any kind of media related to Badlands wants to make a bold and solid confirmation of precisely when the story takes place. So it very well could take place well beyond even that point in the timeline, and apparently Trachtenberg did technically confirm just that. In addition to that IGN interview, he also spoke with the Brandon Davis YouTube channel. He was grilled a little bit about the timeline, and he made a committed statement. Perhaps under duress, maybe he was put on the spot, but he said what he said, and this is it. I can say that Badlands is set after Resurrection, so Badlands is the furthest in the future any of the two franchises has gone, and that's all I can say. I'll accept that answer, and I like the idea that it does take place after Resurrection. I like to think that this is so far off into the future that human beings are either endangered or extinct, and only the synthetics remain. They're still obsessed with attaining specimens from other worlds, but that's really just their programming, their only purpose. They do it and go on these missions, which are usually doomed to fail anyway, and just repeat the cycle over and over, like a real-life dead internet theory come to pass. Maybe not the most optimistic angle of where humanity may have ended up, but a possible one. I guess this is just a really long way of saying we have no idea what year Badlands takes place in, or where it fits into the timeline, at least for now. I understand Trachtenberg's reasoning, it's sound enough, but he's done this twice now, and he should be warned. If he doesn't land on a particular place in the timeline, someone may end up doing it for him, somewhere, somehow in the extended universe or other related media. Not that it would greatly affect his films, but that may be something that ends up happening without his input, and something only really obsessed fans may care about. After all, we can be sticklers. We can make things fit into the timeline if we have to. Still to this day, if you want to, say, include Alien vs. Predator and Aliens vs. Predator Requiem into the overall timeline, make it fit with the other films, such as the original Alien films, the prequels, the midquels, and all the Predator films, there is actually some wiggle room to do that. Unlike Star Wars, nobody has really said we can't. You might remember that Killer of Killers and Badlands actually did include our first glimpses into Yauja Prime. No, that distinction belongs to Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, set at the time in present-day 2007. I remember how big of a deal that actually was when the movie first came out, and really one of the very few notable things about it. We were so intrigued by what the Predator homeworld may look like, and we were so, grateful to just get 90 seconds or so of it on screen. How things have changed. The entire opening of Badlands, about 10 to 15 minutes, takes place on Yauja Prime. We get a very good look at this world, and even a little bit of the non-Yauja indigenous life. It is here where we meet our hero, Dek. He's up in the mountainous, cavernous areas training with his brother, Quay. We learn fairly quickly that Dek isn't exactly up to snuff with the rest of the Yauja. He's certainly shorter, he's deformed by their standards, with a broken fang, and is considered to be the runt of the litter. Despite all this, Quay continues to encourage him, at least to a limit. Dek wants to earn acceptance, and more specifically earn the honor of gaining the invisibility cloak that these predators are so well known for, but apparently are not given out so easily. Dek decides that he will go to Genna, hunt down and kill the Kalisk, bring it home as a trophy, and finally earn his place in the clan. Quay protests, believing it to be a death sentence, but Dek is determined nevertheless. Things take a turn when their father, Nyor, arrives. It would seem that he has given Quay his own mission behind Deck's back. The runt is an embarrassment, not worthy of the clan, and must be killed. That task is brought upon Quay, who refuses, and he himself is killed by Nyor, but not before sending the ship out to Genna with Deck in it. According to their father, protecting a weakling is a sign of weakness itself. Quay paid dearly for it. Deck witnessed this brutal death with his own eyes before taking off. This mission becomes much more complicated than Deck had anticipated. Finding his trophy won't just be for his own sake, but it will be to honor his brother, who gave his life to make this hunt possible. We as the audience can already gather that this won't end up being so simple. He's not going to find and kill this creature, take back its head, and become accepted by his father in a triumphant moment, but we're not really sure if Deck realizes this yet. Despite what just about anyone would call a traumatic event in witnessing his brother's murder, by his father no less, Deck is still very much deeply entrenched in the Yauja Code of Honor. He has a one-track mind the moment he sets foot on the planet. Find the Kalisk, bring back his trophy. The planet may have other ideas. He's very nearly killed within the first hour or so of this hunt, but luckily he's saved by Thea after a chance encounter. The poisonous plants paralyze Deck, leaving him as easy prey for the giant vultures circling above. Thea happens to know a lot about these plants and is able to develop an antidote to the poison. In fact, she knows a lot about everything on this planet. She has been on Genna for about 2 years now, part of a crew consisting of Weyland-Yutani synthetics. No humans occupy this base, the reasoning being that no human could likely survive on this planet for very long. Thea was programmed along with her counterpart, her sister, Tessa, to have a higher sensitivity than the other synths. This sensitivity allows them to better understand and exploit the planet's creatures. The synthetic siblings were designed to work in tandem. Tessa was designed for field work, actually out exploring the planet, while Thea was designed for lab research. Thea's very first day actually out in the field happened to include an encounter with a deadly, unkillable Kalisk, which led to both androids being terribly damaged and her current predicament, in need of the Yauja's help. She asks Deck if she can join him. She won't get too far too fast without legs, and she's determined to find her sister. "I've seen the Kalisk. I survived it," she tells him. "You take me along with you, and I'll guide you to its den. Once there, I get my legs, you get your trophy, and everyone's a winner." Deck refuses at first. He insists that Yauja hunt alone. It's only when she reminds him that since she's synthetic, she can really be considered more of a tool that he agrees. And that's how this partnership starts. They both have their goals. They can now work together in a way that's mutually beneficial. Deck wants his trophy, and Thea wants to find her sister and her legs. What Deck doesn't know yet is that Weyland-Yutani, and by association Thea, is also after the Kalisk. He would be, and is, very much considered a threat to the company's mission, and would likely end up being killed or captured. Thea doesn't necessarily lie about this, she just happens to leave that key detail out. Women. Am I right? Am I right, fellas? And I guess this is as good a time as any to address what may or may not be a controversial aspect to the film. There are voices out there who have amplified and spoken out pretty combatively about certain underlying themes. The idea being that the old ways of the Yauja represent toxic masculinity, and it's the Predator's quirky girlfriend that helps him explore his feelings and emotions to leave all of that behind. I don't quite know about that. I think you can take a certain kind of message about toxic masculinity away from the film, but just as easily you could not. But are we really going to pretend this is the first movie where the macho hero has a plucky companion who reveals that deep within that tough exterior he's really just a big old softy? That's a pretty well-known and reliable trope at this point. And this certainly isn't the first movie where the character leaves home, begins to think differently about the value system in which they were raised, and ultimately discards it. That's literally the hero's journey. We've seen that countless times. Maybe it's just the combination of the two that led to the perfect storm, or maybe people just want clicks. I would be curious to know what Dan Trachtenberg may have to say about the matter, but I haven't seen any interviews where he's discussed those specific themes. And I'm curious to know what you think. If you've seen the movie, did you have an impression that it would have something like that before going into it, and would you say it ended up being an issue? If you haven't seen the movie, even if you're watching this spoiler review, but are still curious, if not a little wary, then I'd say you still should check it out and decide for yourself. But I guess that's all I have to say on the matter, so let's move forward and see if I have any chance of beating those shill accusations. It is definitely the relationship between Deck and Thea that is the core of the movie. That's where it is strongest. Make no mistake, the movie does ask a lot of us to invest in these non-human characters. It ends up working well. these are traits we recognize in ourselves. These characters have fears and desires. They have vulnerabilities. They have their strengths. They overcome challenges. Modern special effects have certainly aided greatly in the expressiveness of the Yauja lead. While the effects have been very impressive in the past, particularly the first two entries from the great Stan Winston, they didn't really require what was required by Dec. The formula at the time was to save the reveal of what was under the mask for the end. For the most part, when we do see the Yauja unmasked, we're supposed to be threatened by this creature, which carries an almost permanent evil grimace. Here we have a new Predator design developed by carrier of the Winston torch and legend in his own right, Alec Gillis. It's a unique design, complementing an equally unique film. Of course, right away from the very first trailer, we had people criticizing this design. They throw it up and compare it to the original Predator, deeming it unworthy. I think that just goes to serve the point, though, since that is exactly how he is perceived by the other Yauja. The Predator costume itself is practical. You can see in behind-the-scenes material that Demetrius Schuster-Kolamatangi's face is exposed to deliver the performance, later to be replaced with CGI. While there may possibly be some practical effects used for the face, it is mostly computer-generated, and a pretty stark departure from the previous live-action Predator film, Prey. Not only is the budget bigger, allowing for better effects, but Prey also followed that formula of the first two films, where the Yauja's expressions are meant to be threatening and scary. With Dec, we see a wide range of emotions conveyed very convincingly. We can see the inner workings of his mind, figuring things out, going through certain feelings, all by the facial expressions alone. This is quite remarkable. We've never had, as an audience, such an up-close and personal relationship with the Predator character, whether it be the villain, as previously, or in this case, the hero. It's all the more impressive that they pulled it off, considering that this is very much a creature that was specifically designed to be scary, ugly, and threatening with the original 1987 film. I think it's a testament to these impressive, Academy Award-worthy special effects, along with Trachtenberg's writing of the character, and of course Schuster-Kolamatangi's performance, that it was pulled off so successfully. Having said all that, I really don't think it could have worked if it was just the Predator on its own, or even interacting with another alien creature, speaking alien languages all throughout the 90 minutes. That might have been asking just a little too much. Still, I think we need something that at least resembles a human in order to avoid alienating the audience. That puts a lot of weight on Elle Fanning's performance. I don't think just anyone could have pulled off what she pulled off here. An actress in this role needs to take just one slight step back from humanity to convincingly play a robot, but not more than that. The interactions and chemistry with the alien monster sharing the screen with her need to be exact, or the illusion is completely broken. All the while understanding that this is not the Thea movie, this is the Predator movie, and the acting has to be, in a way, generous, while finding a way to have her character performance shine all on its own. This is a daunting task, more than I think Elle Fanning will be given credit for, but she discovers the perfect balance here, and the movie reaches certain heights purely because of her work in this role. Maybe some people will find the character initially grating, which Dec seems to, but that is by design. A little too upbeat, a little too perky. The goal is that with enough time spent with the character, you get to the heart of her too, just as you do with Dec, and I think they achieve that. She has the surface level just as Dec does. I think a lot of what Fanning brings to this character rings true. Thea somehow reminds me of a certain type. Of that doctor or nurse who's just a little too chipper when stabbing you with a needle or sewing up a wound or performing any number of uncomfortable procedures on you. There's something just so curious to me about that, but the impression you may get within those few minutes is much different than what you'd experience if you were to follow her around for a day. This, I suppose, was my own personal experience with the Thea character. It's also worth mentioning that a good reason for Thea's excitability is the fact that she hasn't really experienced Genna firsthand before all of this. As she mentions, she's been cooped up in a lab for 2 years. You can imagine how an android, especially one specifically created with a higher sensitivity, may eventually develop a longing to see the things they've only read about, when they're right outside the door. Added to all that, Fanning is playing the second role here, Tessa. She's engrossed by the planet in an entirely different way. Much like Dec, she has a one-track mind as well. Attain the specimen at all costs. Her attitude is anything but chipper, and she's very clearly the more straightforward and serious of these two androids. There's the interesting moment with her, when we first meet her, damaged and being repaired. She has the broken eye. Before the new one is attached, she turns her head and gasps. First impression here is that the shock of coming back to life distracts her, but this seems to be more of a refusal. She wants that reminder of her failure. If she somehow feels incomplete without finishing her mission and pleasing the company, then she may feel unworthy to be complete physically. The hypersensitivity of their programming can work in interesting ways. Tessa amounts to the closest thing we could call the main villain of this story. She's not an especially vile villain, but enough to have Deck reconsider what he deems an appropriate trophy. I don't think we can really classify the Callisk as a villain. At the end of it all, it's just a creature, and it's bound by its nature. The company is interested in it for its regenerative abilities, which are impressive. It does seem to be unkillable. Until it isn't. We reach a point, though, where we do feel a little bit of sympathy for the creature. I guess we could possibly classify Deck's father as a villain, but in the same kind of way, he's a creature bound by his nature as well. His antagonism is more symbolic than anything else, and he's really not a part of the main conflict of the story. Maybe we could even just go ahead and say it's the company itself that's the villain. But that's more conceptual and not really all that dramatic, so we are left with Tessa. I think they could have pushed a little bit harder with this character, somehow made her more hateable, somehow have more emotional drive included in the conflict between her, Thea, Deck, and the Callisk. Just a little bit more. It could have gone a long way. We have that big moment with her in the giant exosuit at the end, fighting the creature, which admittedly is really cool, but it doesn't feel entirely earned. Another character I have to mention is Bud. This is the CGI creature, the little mascot that ends up following Deck and Tessa on their adventure. This is undoubtedly the inclusion in the movie that's going to have people thinking this is very much along the lines of Disney and Star Wars. This is Predator's answer to Baby Yoda, quite blatantly. But to be fair, this isn't even the first time they decided to include the animal companion in a Predator movie. Again, I have to bring up the 2018 film. You may remember, they had that Predator dog that was initially evil, then got knocked on the head and became friends with the heroes. Why they feel the need to fit these kinds of things into Predator movies, I don't really know. I didn't mind Bud too much, though. She was a little too cutesy at moments. In fact, it gave me some flashbacks of that little monkey alien from the Lost in Space movie, but not nearly as offensive, and they didn't take any of the gags or overall jokiness too far. And I will say that she at least serves actually a very important part of the plot. As it would turn out, Bud is an infant version of the Callisk. When Bud becomes allies with Deck and marks him, this ends up saving Deck's life when the Big Mama Callisk recognizes the scent before moving in for the kill. When Deck realizes this connection, his mission changes, and he seeks to reunite the infant with its parent. Sounds pretty wholesome, but I absolutely love the fact that once we're about to get this touching, lovey-dovey scene, and we put it all together and recognize that the Predator and Prey have come to not just an understanding, but a true spiritual connection, the Callisk is killed. Blown to smithereens right in front of its kid. So, not quite Disney. Or maybe very much Disney, depending on how you look at it. And yeah, as far as the PG-13 rating and violence goes, the movie is definitely plenty violent. I think the promises of pushing the limit of the rating were kept, and a lot of it comes down to the fact that since there's no humans in the film, there's no red blood, and the blood of any other color is deemed acceptable by the ratings board. There's the glowing green Yauja blood, and we see violence against those creatures. Limbs cut off, beheadings, stabbed through the hand, stabbed through the head. Fairly brutal stuff. In general, the action is very good. There's a nice scene at the climax of the film where Deck has lost all of his weaponry and has to prepare to invade the Weyland-Yutani base that is reminiscent of Schwarzenegger's preparation at the end of the original film. Deck has to use everything he's learned of this planet through his experiences and through what Thea has told him to his advantage and become this primal hunter. All that was really good, and all that felt earned. The action where Deck fights all of the Weyland-Yutani synths was very well done. Even Bud gets in on the action. I have to wonder, though, what if these weren't synths? What if they were human Weyland-Yutani henchmen? What if Deck came down there and just ripped through them all, Rambo 4 style, in a glorious bloody rampage? I have to say, that probably would have been a lot cooler. It would have satisfied my bloodlust, at least. And not just that, but it probably would have been a little more interesting to have actual humans with actual personalities. It's more like Deck is just defeating a bunch of video game enemies, which is cool, but I'm left thinking back on a line that Timothy Olyphant had in the Alien Earth TV series. I would imagine that it's the pain that makes killing them so satisfying. Maybe he was onto something. On the subject of Alien Earth, once again, it is Cameron Brown playing these androids, and he also happened to play the alien inside of a suit on that show. And once again, I have nothing against Cameron Brown, he does a great job. I fully understand the conceit that the movie has, in that humans would have better sense than to occupy this planet. I can buy that. but I could just as easily buy that humans are stupid enough to try anyway. So I'm conflicted on that. Possibly having humans, or even a combination of the synthetics and humans, may have worked better for that finale. But at the same time, if we throw in humans, then it does take away what's special about Predator Badlands. Ultimately, I think it's a more interesting and challenging movie because of the absence of humans. And I will stress that this is a special movie. I wouldn't call this a rave review, but it's fairly close to one. There is, of course, no topping the original Predator. You can have your own personal preference, that's fine, but Predator is just one of the all-time greatest action films ever made. It's a perfect movie, it's endlessly rewatchable, and if you're really not open to something newer, like Badlands, then just watch Predator again. You're gonna have a great time. I also really love Predator 2. I'll always have a soft spot for it. I wouldn't quite equate Predator 1 and 2 to being the powerhouse that is Alien and Aliens, but it is a good pairing and a good double feature. I was also very impressed with Prey. It went back to the formula, but with a twist, and it feels like a truer version of what a Predator 3 should be over the 2010 film Predators. But you know what, I just may like Badlands a tiny bit better than Prey. I think if I were to do a ranking, it would take that third spot. If only because it's just so different and explores the world in such a large kind of way. I really like that, and I think there is room for all these kinds of stories where we can get deeper into the Yauja mythology, and not necessarily even just with Dek, and not necessarily departing from the formula that worked so well in the first place. I think that still can work, as Prey has shown. Just as with any number of the Predator comics, sometimes you'll get the stories where the humans are the focus and the Yauja are the clear villains. Sometimes the Yauja are more front and center. Other times there are alliances. There's so much that can be done, and I think Badlands opened the door up for that, along with the connections to the Alien series. It's an exciting prospect. And it looks like, hopefully, we might be able to see more in the future. The risk and the leap of faith paid off. From what I've read, it looks like it's performing at the box office better than expected. But I don't know, people can take box office numbers and apparently make up whatever narrative they want. Basically, if you like the movie, it's a success. If you don't like it, then it's a bomb, and you can support either argument. So it might be a pointless endeavor getting into box office minutia. All I can do is hope to see more, and wait for an announcement of what we may get next. I like what Trachtenberg has been doing. I've liked the 3 movies he's created, each vastly different from the next, and I'd very much like to see what else he could bring us. If I had to take a guess, then probably the next thing we'll see in the more immediate future is another animated film. Killer of Killers introduced the idea of freezing humans in stasis, so we already have the opportunity waiting to go where we could see the return of Dutch from Predator, Harrigan from Predator 2, and Naru from Prey. Of course, I'd love to see either or all of them return, and even a return of Dek and Thea, only in animated form. The ending of Badlands very much left things open for a sequel, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a live-action movie. I could actually see both the ending of Badlands and the ending of Killer of Killers converging and leading to the opening of a new film. The ending of Badlands, I have to say, was a little bit silly. Dek sees this ship approaching and he reveals that's his mother. So that's the hook we get when we cut to credits. Okay, fine. But I've heard some people theorizing that the Warlord Predator, shown in the final segment in Killer of Killers, is actually female and is actually Dek's mother. That would be kind of a cool twist, so either that would work out in an animated film or in another live-action outing. Though what I do appreciate about Trachtenberg's efforts is that they've all been so distinctive. I appreciated Badlands so much for what it is and how it stands out, but at the same time I'm not really all that sure if Dek should be the face of the Predator series moving forward with a new adventure each time. If the story's good enough, sure, maybe they could make that work, but if there's one thing I think we've learned from these 3 newer movies, it's that the Predator series is so much larger than just one character. There's a huge, infinite universe out there to explore, and I'm willing and eager to do so. But maybe that's enough looking into the future for now. Sometimes we get so caught up in what may be coming next that we fail to appreciate the here and the now. The Here and Now is all about Predator Badlands. It's a movie I very much enjoyed and would very much recommend with a good amount of enthusiasm. I've actually went to see it twice now, once in IMAX and the other time in 3D Ultra AVX D-Box. Those types of exhibitions are always good incentives to get you out to the theater instead of waiting for streaming, and both experiences were really good and really heightened the overall presentation of the movie, each in their different ways. As far as I know and could tell, this did not have any scenes specifically filmed for IMAX with IMAX cameras, but the presentation speaks for itself. The movie is grand, and the IMAX presentation gives it the scope it deserves. The 3D presentation, along with the D-box seats, is definitely more of a novelty, but it's a fun one. It probably goes without saying, but this wasn't specifically filmed for 3D. That era is pretty much over and might belong to Avatar alone at this point. But the post-converted 3D works well where it counts, and with the non-stop action of the film, the D-box seats went pretty wild all throughout and gave the feeling of this theme park ride, which was fun. I figure if I like the movie, I can watch it countless times when it comes to home video, but there's only a short window of time that I can try out these kinds of theatrical exhibitions. So if you're still on the fence about the movie, but might want to try something like that out, then maybe I would want to twist your arm a little bit and encourage you to see it as soon as you can. This might even be a shorter window than usual. I suspect that within the next few days, they're going to set it aside from the IMAX and 3D and D-box presentations to make room for The Running Man. Arnold's 80s legacy lives on still today, doesn't it? Of the two experiences, I would easily vote in favor of IMAX. I love IMAX. No bells and whistles, just a pure, immersive theatrical experience on its own. They tout that everything's bigger and better on IMAX, and it happens to be true. The D-box seats are fun and everything, but with the IMAX sound, you almost don't even need that. The big moments shake your seats and the whole theater anyway. You can appreciate the sound design to its fullest, and there are plenty of audio Easter eggs that you'll recognize from other movies in both the Alien and Predator series. And I could appreciate the musical score for the film all the more, and if I can sing it a final praise, it would be for that. The score is a joint effort from Sarah Schachner, who composed the score for Prey, and Benjamin Wallfish, who scored Killer of Killers, as well as Alien Romulus. Here they come together with what I feel is the best score yet. It's exciting, it's unique, it's so perfectly fitting with this world and with this story. Just an incredible achievement itself. When awards season comes, I feel like it would be pretty expected that at least the visual effects would be in the running, but I think they should really push to get the score a nomination. It certainly deserves it. I've even heard some people raving about Elle Fanning's performance, saying that she should be nominated for Best Supporting Actress. It's a very good performance, I enjoyed it quite a bit, and it would definitely be an outside-of-the-box choice. I kind of doubt we'll be seeing that, though, but we can always dream of that, along with Electric Sheep. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Predator Badlands if you've seen it. Love it or hate it, I want to know. And I'd want to know where you would ultimately rank it in the Predator series overall. So please comment below and share your thoughts. As always, I'd like to thank you very much for watching today. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with the latest from Alien Theory. My very special thanks today goes out to Nicholas Butta, our Weyland-Yutani executive, and Gregory Ford, the Patreon Hive Praetorian. A very special thanks, as always, goes out to Lady Anne in the Ellen Ripley Tier of Excellence. If you'd like to join the Hive and support the channel, check out my Patreon page for further information. You can also follow me on social media. Follow @alien_theory on X, formerly Twitter. Follow @alientheoryyt on Facebook and Instagram for more. And until next time, this is Alien Theory, signing off.